Students, Standard 6. In the last session, we finished the revision of chapter 3rd in chemistry. So, now we are going to start the revision in a physics of the chapter number 11. That is light, shadows and reflections. First of all, we will talk about light. What is light? We know that light is a form of energy which enables us to see the objects. Without light, only eyes are not able to see the objects. Generally, if I ask how can we see the objects, then the people will answer generally that we see the objects with our eyes. It is not perfectly right. It is right that we can see with the eyes, but the other thing necessary is the light also. Without light, we are not able to see the things. Suppose you are in a dark room, electricity is gone, and outside also it's very dark, probably the no moon there. Then how will you feel? You won't be able to see the things which are very nearby to you. In this situation, your eyes are open, but you won't be able to see the things. Why? Because there is no light. So, light is also very, very necessary to see other objects. It means that light, when enters in our eyes, then only we can able to see the beautiful things like the vehicles, flowers, plants, animals, and so many other things. In the night time also, in the sky you see the moon, stars, planets, etc. So, light is a very, very important thing to see the objects clearly. Now, some of the objects are such that they have their own light. They produce their own light. So, they are known as the luminous objects. For example, when you switch on the bulb produces its own light, it emits its own light. Similarly, you switch on the torch bulb gives you light. You light a candle, the flame of the candle emits the light. Sun itself emits so much light. So in this situation, all these objects which emits their own light are known as luminous objects. Sun is the natural luminous object. Can you imagine which are the other natural luminous objects? You will say probably moon, but moon is not a luminous object. You will say stars. Yes, stars are also natural luminous objects. And one more creature on the earth. Sometimes you see in the rainy season at night time when there is dark, that are the fireflies. When they are flying, you will see that they are emitting green or yellow colored light. So they are also luminous objects. That are natural luminous objects. And the others are non-luminous objects like the wood or mirror, metals, stones. They don't emit their own light. So they are known as non-luminous objects. So you must have idea that the objects which emit their own light are known as luminous objects and the others are non-luminous objects. Now you will say, why moon is not a luminous object? Because in the night time, sun is not there, but the moon gives the light. So why it is not luminous? Actually, the moon does not emit its own light. It just throws the light back towards the earth, which is falling on it. The light of the sun falls on the moon, and moon is just throwing back that light to us. So it seems to be a luminous object, but in fact it is not a luminous object. It is a non-luminous object. So we discussed about this first, second and third. In third, natural source of light, I already explained you, sun, stars and the firefly. That are the self-luminous, means they are emitting their own light. And artificial are the bulb, tube light, candle, etc. That are the artificial objects or the artificial sources of light. Now, if you see the objects around us and try to see through them, means you hold them such that there is a source of light, and if you observe them properly, then you can divide them in three types of objects. That are the transparent objects, translucent objects and opaque objects. Now how will you decide which is transparent or translucent or opaque object? For that you have to collect the different type of objects, whatever is available near you, like an eraser, a piece of paper, tracing paper, cardboard, a piece of stone, or plastic, sheet of plastic, different type of plastic, polythene plastic, your book, etc. And then what we have to do? You have to do that, try to look at something far away. Hold it like that and try to look through it. Then you will see that some of the objects are such that you won't be able to see anything through it. For example, if I am holding this book in front of you, when I am in a class, I won't be able to see you. Why? Because it is an opaque object. So when we cannot see through an object, it is known as opaque object, because they do not allow the light to pass through them. So an object which do not allow light to pass them completely, they don't allow at all. So they are known as opaque objects. For example, a book, wooden objects, metals, bricks, a mirror, etc. So that are the opaque objects which do not allow the light to pass through them at all. Next, if you take a tracing paper or a butter paper, or if it is not available, you can take a normal your paper from the notebook and put few oil drops and rub it around. Then you will be able to make a oil paper. Now try to look through it. Then you will see that you are able to see the objects, but not clearly. It will be blurry. Why? Because it allows the light to pass through them partially, not completely. So you will be able to see through them but not clearly. So that objects are known as translucent objects. So the tracing paper, butter paper, oily paper, etc. They all are allowing the light partially to pass through them. So they are known as the translucent objects. Then you can take a piece of glass, clear glass, clean water, etc. Then if you hold that piece of glass, you will be able to see through. Because it allows the light to pass through them completely. Clean water, if there is clean water in a container, and if you throw anything like a coin in it, then at the bottom you can see the coin clearly. Why? Because it allows the light to pass through it completely. So we can see the object very clearly. Through the piece of glass also, clean glass. Also we can see through completely. Why? Because it allows the light to pass through it completely. So the objects which allow the light to pass through them completely are known as the transparent objects. So we learn about three types of objects. Those who allow the light to pass through them completely are transparent objects. For example, glass, clean water. Second, the objects which allow the light to pass through them partially are translucent objects. So we cannot see clearly, and that are translucent. For example, the butter paper, tracing paper, oily paper, some types of plastics, colored glasses, etc. And the last, opaque, means those who do not allow the light to pass through them at all. So we cannot see through them. For example, the cardboard, wood, brick, etc. Now, the shadow. Generally we see that light travels in a straight line. But generally sometimes when you go out, then you find your shadow. Shadow is always in the opposite direction of the sun. If sun is in the east, your shadow will be in the west, and so on. So now, why this shadow is produced? So generally when light travels in a straight line and in a in its path. If you put an opaque object, then what will happen? From that part, the light will not pass through. And therefore, behind that object, if you put a screen or a piece of paper or a cardboard, on that part you will see the dark patches. Why? Because the light cannot pass through it, so it will be dark. So that dark patches are the shadow of that opaque objects. So generally when an opaque object come in the way of the travel of the sunlight, then they form a shadow. Transparent objects does not cast a shadow. Otherwise, always we will be able to see the shadow of the air, because air is the transparent. So the transparent object don't cast a shadow. If you put a glass, it will not cast a shadow. Water, clean water does not cast a shadow. So only opaque objects make dark shadow. And translucent will also, but not that much dark shadow. But the opaque objects will cast a very dark shadow. So when the opaque objects come in the way of the sunlight, then that black dark patches either on the ground or on the screen or on the wall, then it is known as the shadow of the object. If you notice properly the color of the shadow, the objects can be of different colors: red, white, blue, pink, green, etc. Do we see that the shadow of that object is also of the same color? If you hold a red object, then the shadow will be red? No. Shadow does not depend on the color of the object. Shadow is always black, because that part does not get the light. When you don't get light, what is it? Dark, black. And therefore, the shadow does not depend on the color of the object. Whatever color is there on the object, but the shadow of all the object, either green or red or pink or blue or whatever color, but the shadow will be of black color only. Now, do the shadow give you information about the shape of the object? Sometimes it will give you the idea of the shape of the object, but not always. It depends from which side the sun is coming, which part of that object is in front of the sun, and then it depends on it. So not every time you will be able to understand about the shadow. Sometimes it gives only a round shadow, because sometimes suppose you are standing at the noon in the sunlight, then only around your legs there will be a circle, and therefore it won't give you idea of your body. So it depends that which surface is in front of the sunlight, and therefore not always you will get the idea of the shape. What are the essential conditions for the formation of shadow? First of all, we need a source of light. Second required thing is the opaque object. And third required thing is the screen, like a wall, or it can be a cardboard or a white paper, etc. These three things are required to cast a shadow. If you don't have a source of light, how will you be able to see the shadow? So the source of light, the opaque object, and a screen. Without screen, sometimes you won't be able to see the shadow, but it doesn't mean there is no shadow. If you put the screen, then you will be able to see the shadow. So now the shadow, when the shadow is forming, there are two parts in the shadow. There is the umbra and penumbra. If you watch the shadow carefully, then there will be two type of parts will be seen. Some part will be very dark, and some part in the shadow will be little dark, not that much dark. So the darkest part is known as umbra, and the other side part which are not that much dark, which are little light, then that part is known as penumbra. So the region in which the umbra is there, it is more dark, but in penumbra it is not that much dark. For example, you have to draw the diagram. I already tried to draw the diagram. This is the light source. Light is falling on the object. Here it is the opaque objects. So now the shadow will be like that. So it does middle part will be very, very dark. That is umbra. And the side part here in this triangles like that, it will be little not dark, that much dark. There is a little light. So that part is known as penumbra. So you can make shadow go in the dark room with a candle or a bulb, and on the other side you can with your hand, as shown in the figure also on the page number 109, you can make different type of shadows which resemble some birds or animals, etc. So here we are going to finish the session, followed by the PDF, and we almost discussed all the questions. So as an assignment, you will write down the answers on your own. Thank you very much.